In today's UFC news, we have Gilbert Burns rooting for Rockhold in his fight against Paulo Costa, whom Burns called a clown. Sounds like another controversy brimming in the UFC. You're not wrong there, but why did Burns drop this burn on Costa, and why is his support for Rockhold important in the upcoming match? We're going to tell you all about it. Starting with the podcast where all of it began, ConnectCast, that's the name. This Brazilian podcast is where Gilbert Burns made an appearance recently and made these comments. According to Gilbert, Prochazka, a nickname given to Costa, is a clown. Not that he has anything against him, he clarified, but he was done with his antics on social media. So in the upcoming UFC 278, even between Costa and Rockhold, his support will be with the latter fighter. And that's a risk if you ask us, because while Costa may be clown material, at least he's been active in fights. Sure, he did have 2 back-to-back losses against Vettori and Adesanya in the past 2 years, but at least he's been in the game, unlike Rockhold, who's going to enter the cage for the first time in 3 years. Plus, he hasn't won a fight in 5 years, with his last win being against David Branch in 2017. Guess the fight's going to be crucial for both players. At least Burns knows who he's rooting for. But was calling Costa a clown really necessary? Like, we know rivalries can be tough, and in the world of UFC, everyone is your rival. So, is calling them a clown really the best thing to do? Can't you, root for your fighter without slamming the other down? Pun intended. But clearly, Gilbert just had to make fun of someone, and that's because he isn't happy with Costa's usual breakdowns on Twitter, especially after losing both his recent fights. He's a fan of silently preserving, and he doesn't like how his compatriot has been carrying himself at all. And it's a big deal for a Brazilian fighter to not support one of his own. Does that mean he's right in his judgment? Well, Costa is showing some concerning behavior, which even his fans have noticed. Let's take a look at his UFC history to see what's wrong with the guy. So you guys know how brilliant his start was in UFC, right? A 13-0 career score is not at all bad. That's actually made Paulo a champion in the championship, until his 2 losses, we mean. First came Adesanya against Paulo, lost in September 2020 with 23-1. Then came Vettori in October 2021 with 18-5. Obviously, the guy must have been crushed after that, pun again intended. But see, these losses weren't exactly down to just luck. Paulo was at fault a bit there, and Gilbert mentions that in the podcast. He said that, sure, losses happened, but even after his loss against Adesanya, when it was time to face Marvin in 2021, he showed up super heavy. This pretty much reduced his odds for a win to a good extent. Let us also remind you about how cocky the guy was when he was about to face Adesanya. In the build-up to his first title fight, the animosity between the 2 fighters was super high, and Costa even went on to call his rival a skinny clown. Guess Carmen's hitting him in the face now when he's being dubbed the same. As for his first fight with Adesanya, well, we've already told you what happened, and thanks to his smug insults before the fight, the winner went on to disrespect him even more during his post-fight celebrations. So, is that why Paulo isn't himself? Yeah, kind of. Imagine yourself entering a competition all smug and confident and coming out a sore loser. And a sore loser he became after the match, because that's when his social media personality showed up. And he's been saying things that have even gotten fans worried for him. Sure, some others have been calling him super funny, but these tweets aren't really doing much for his public image. Gilbert's comments have proven that. Along with a few of his tweets, including the one about the USADA agents, the guy's definitely got some unresolved anger, that's for sure. And while it may not be on brand, at least he's entertaining his fans. Next, there's also his beef with the UFC. The Brazilian fighter's losing bouts have also made him question the organization's decision to pair him with the kind of opponents they have. He explained that in more detail in a recent interview, and has even mentioned why he didn't want to fight Rockhold. The guy also says that because Luke isn't ranked, he may not be the best option for him to fight with. He does say that it would have been a great opportunity if he was ranked, but right now it's just not the smartest move. He also went on to add that rankings are the foundation of everything, and if Rockhold did have one, then this whole fight would have been a pro for both of them. He even had a comment about Burns, who just seems like his arch nemesis at this point. Paulo mentioned him as an example, saying how the other Brazilian was ranked number 2 until he gave Chimaev an opportunity and lost. And now he's dropped to number 4, and while that's bad, fighting an unranked guy is even worse. Yes, both Brazilian fighters need to sort their beef out before facing each other at some point, or maybe they'll sort it out in the ring. Next, let's also talk about Rockhold. Now, we've already told you about his win streak, or lack thereof, in the UFC, so now that he finally is coming back after years of an injury-induced break, he's chosen Costa as his rival, and that is ex-teammate Daniel Cormier in a fix, because he doesn't understand 2 things. 1, 1, why Luke wants to fight so badly, and 2, why he's picked the Brazilian fighter over the others. He did say that it was a winnable fight, but it is going to be difficult. Cormier also went on to add that we've all seen Paulo at his best, even when he lost his fight against Vettori at 205 pounds, so facing him in a fight may not be the best for Luke. But he's all set for the fight to happen, and his reasoning isn't too far from Gilbert's judgment of his rival, because Luke does not like Costa. He mentioned in a recent interview that the guy has disrespected the sport far too long, and that's what's motivated him to correct him. Hey now Luke, can't that be done over a cup of coffee instead of in the Octagon? Guess that's not the norm in the UFC. And so Rockhold's ready to show his rival the door just to make the statement. Now, that's a lot of drama happening, and the only way to see who wins is to wait for the match to find out. The Bleacher Report is betting on Rockhold to win if he eludes heavy blows and gets Costa on the mat sooner rather than later. Till then, let's talk about some other news from the UFC, starting with Dana White's comments about UFC's pay scale. That's probably not going up anytime soon. According to White, in his justification, he says that boxers are always looking to make more money, and that's one of the reasons the sport's being destroyed. White even went on to add that he's paying the fighters what they're supposed to get, and if anyone's unhappy, they can go start their own MMA league and see what happens. Now, that's a little too rough coming from a big guy like him, especially considering how the talk about UFC fighters being underpaid is true, at least in comparison to other major sporting leagues, and part of that reason is that his league, like the WWE, has no union representing its fighters. So, is a union the next big step for UFC in the future? What do you guys think? Next, we have Daniel Cormier's grudge against Jon Jones, who defeated DC in UFC 182 5 years ago, but Cormier doesn't seem to be getting over the loss and called Jones a cheater in his recent appearance on the Pivot podcast. If you don't already know, Jones was the only person who defeated Cormier in his first 24 bouts. DC did go on to suffer consecutive losses against Stipe Miocic, but his career hasn't been too bad despite that. But you don't forget the first guy you lost to, and it doesn't help that Jones did end up losing his title in a rematch with Daniel after being tested positive for a banned substance, leaving Cormier to wonder how he would have fared in a fight the first time around. And last, we have Kamaru Usman's path to becoming the GOAT. Pressures are high for Usman as he's being dubbed the next greatest fighter in the UFC. His fight against Anderson Silva will be a deciding step in the journey, and we're all on the edge of our seats to see what happens. Leading up to this fight, Usman has spent his time working out and practicing, not laying off as many believe. His last fight may have been 10 months ago, and he may have broken his hand in his fight with Colby Covington, but he is not backing down and has spent these months trying to get better for his next. Let's see what fate and the Octagon have in store for him in the next fight. And that's a wrap for this video. Who are you rooting for in UFC 278? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.